Good evening. Welcome to the Youngstown Press Club's annual meeting. I'm Lori Factor, board president. So annual meetings certainly can be notorious for being long-winded and full of business-related activities. And, we do conduct business when warranted, but not tonight. Tonight is a night to celebrate our successes and look forward to some of our future activities and to welcome world-class speaker Carmen Gentile. Our leadership structure is such that many of us are still doing the everyday work gig. I know I am. I know a lot of our board members are. So we are very lucky that Diane Fitzpatrick agreed to serve as our executive director. Diane is an organizational whirlwind. And while you've all received her emails, I want you to meet her in person. Diane, please stand, please, so we can recognize you. Thank you. Our Board of Governors provides stability, professional direction, and their time and talent to ensure that we operate effectively and cohesively. Tonight we have in attendance Elise Skolnick, President-elect, Tony Paglia, Treasurer, George Nelson, past President, Joanne Kalarick, at-large member, and Jordan Cohen, at-large member. If you'll all stand, please. Thank you. Brenda Linnert is another at-large member, and she had other duties at that little event that's happening downstairs in the ballroom. So she's downstairs, and then Andrea Sika Heschmeyer is our secretary. She also had another obligation. So thank you for all of the time and effort that you put into making the Youngstown Press Club as robust as it is. This iteration of the Youngstown Press Club started only 5 short years ago, and it was imagined and grown by those who knew the importance of what our purpose and goals are. Early supporters and board members worked tirelessly to create bylaws, events, to do everything that created the foundation of what we are. Mary Beth and Adam Earnhardt, together and individually, used their expertise and contacts to create the bones of what we are now and shepherded us through the pandemic. Without them, we would not have survived. So I'm going to do a shout out to our friends, Mary Beth and Adam. Our next executive director, Tim Fitzpatrick, took the reins, shook us up, and showed us our potential. Tim, you can just wave. Thank you. So we owe a debt of gratitude to them because, folks, we are, as I have been known to say, and some of you will laugh at this, we're at a pivotal time in the club's history. We use that, but we are, truly. We are at a good place with our club. All of that wouldn't have occurred without the hard work of all of those before us. I won't go through the annual report, which Diane created. You can do that on your own. She just passed some of those out. Read our accomplishments, and suffice it to say, we are doing some really great things. Our member surveys provide lots of thoughtful ideas, and your board takes all of that at heart, and we act on that. Ideas like speaker events, membership benefits, and the biggie, scholarship. I will ask you to take a look at these. You have one of them at your place. This is our donate to the scholarship fund. You might not be inclined to do that tonight, but I would ask you if scholarship is important to you, if making sure that the next generation of journalists and marketing communication folks are worthy of our money, please either take one and get back in touch with us, or you can see one of the board members at the end of tonight. So I'm so pleased you're here tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce Elise Skolnick, President-elect, who will take us on a year in review.
So, the year 2023 was a year of growth for the Youngstown Press Club. Marking our 5th birthday, we celebrated having survived the pandemic, during which we went more than a year without any in-person events. After a year of rebuilding, our members were happy to get back to more press club activity. We had 8 events last year, with speakers coming to Youngstown from Connecticut, Los Angeles, Cleveland, and right here in the Mahoning Valley. All were experts in their fields and all had fascinating things to tell us. In addition to events, a focus of the last year was continuing to increase our membership, build strong committees by making the best use of our talented and accomplished members, and letting the community know who the Press Club is and what we stand for. Thanks to our amazing media partners and supporters, the Press Club's work was publicized beyond our expectations and helped us to reach the community. Perhaps our most significant accomplishment in 2023 was our scholarship program. In a survey in late 2022, our members made it clear that they wanted the club to have a scholarship, and within a few months, we had a scholarship program. Funded entirely by the club, we awarded 2 $2,000 scholarships. In September, we raised $6,000 for future scholarships, much of it from the floor at the Hall of Fame and Awards banquet. That, plus 2 large gifts, has allowed us to build our scholarship fund for the future and to continue to award scholarships to journalism and communication majors for years to come. None of these accomplishments would have been possible if not for the strong leadership of our board and our outstanding members who give of their time to help us accomplish these things. Moving forward, we need your help. Our club is only as strong as its members. Please consider volunteering to work on a committee or work on a press club project. We want to hear your ideas, and we will be surveying our members again within the next couple of months. We look forward to working together with you on another successful year for the Youngstown Press Club. And now Adam Ehrenhart will introduce our speaker.
Well, this is a real honor for me because I get to introduce my lifelong childhood friend, Carmen Gentile. Thank you for laughing because we just met for the first time tonight. And I should tell you that comes about thanks in part to Diane, but also because I probably didn't spell it out exactly how I knew Carmen. See, Carmen and I actually grew up right across the river from each other. He was in New Kensington, Pennsylvania, Upper Borough. I mean, you did end up at Shadyside Academy, so, you know. No, sorry, that's, and I was in Brackenridge, Pennsylvania. So, like, when I knew of Carmen, but I didn't know he was from New Kensington. I knew him from Blindsided by the Taliban and some of the work that he was doing. I mean, if you're a journalism professor and you're trying to teach this stuff to your kids and get them excited and interested in going out and covering these important stories across the world, you want to introduce them to these people, especially, you know, if they're, you know, from around here. But the fact is, Carmen, the first time I heard from him, he reached out to me and our department at YSU. He was looking for people to write for PostIndustrial, trying to build deeper connections with universities and particularly our students, trying to find connections with local journalists, especially in places that are hard hit by the collapse of the steel industry. You know, things that, again, Carmen and I would have in common, things that you would have in common with Carmen and I, because just like Carmen, we're both Gen Xers. I hope you don't mind me revealing that. 1970, 1974 here, both growing up in the Alakiski Valley, a different valley, but a valley nonetheless that experienced the same kinds of issues that we experienced here in our valley, Mahoning Valley. And so, yeah, I mean, his story is fantastic, and I'm not going to read his bio. You can do that in the program, or go check out his Wikipedia entry. I did. And it's fascinating. His story is fascinating, and there's no one else who could tell it better than himself, Carmen Gentile.
I need you to use the microphone. The video needs you to use the microphone.
But I am a loudmouth, so I'm going to try to regulate. So now I have to be a little more subdued than I would be because I like to project. I'm Italian. That's why I love Youngstown. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. I have an affinity for Youngstown that goes back to my youth. My father is a graduate from Youngstown and continued to take classes there into his late 30s and would occasionally take me with him to these business courses that he was taking. And I remember very distinctly one time when I was 8, the professor looking over to me and saying, "How much does a bicycle cost? A really good bicycle?" And it was perfect timing because I was angling for a bicycle at that time. And I remember I had to do the quick calculation in my head, looking over, the cost benefit, what's too much, what's too low. And I just blurted out $100. And I thought, I like this school. There's something to this education. But my connection doesn't end there. My wife, Lindsay, is from the Mahoning Valley. She is from Canfield. She is a daughter of the area. And how do I turn these on? Who's going to help me? Jenny? What's that? Which one? As always. How's it work? We have any photos? Oh, yes. And so if you see from this photo here, this is us, November 8th, 2022. We both, that day, I voted in Pennsylvania, she voted in Ohio, and then we got married in downtown Youngstown, right in front of the Avalon, right on the sidewalk, on election day. That we were celebrating our democracy and our union that day. So we are, I've like I said, I've found a lot of happiness in Youngstown. Lindsay is also very involved in the city. She worked, what was this, the Oktoberfest, yes. So I admire the fact that she is so committed to her community here. She does a lot of things, in addition to dressing up like Mother Goose for Halloween, right here in Wick Park, right across the way there. Yeah, a couple years ago. For the kids, I thought that was really great. But one of the things I noticed at that event, this was about a year and a half ago, there was a young reporter there from WFMJ who was, and I thought it was this young lady at first, but it wasn't, who was covering that story and doing such a great job, and it was so difficult. I really admired her because she was shooting, she was producing, she was on camera, she put the whole package together, and I'm sure she went home and went back to the office and edited it and put that and did the VO as well. I was just so impressed with that ability that she exhibited, and I know that a lot of that is because we're all asked to do a lot more than we were in the past, and we've had to adapt in that way, and it's been difficult at times. I know I've had to do that as well. I started out as just I wanted to just to write. I love to write, and that's always been my first passion, but of course, then I started taking photos and then adding video, and it opened up new opportunities for me. So I was commiserating with her over there and saying, I know it's difficult what you're doing. We're all having to do these things now, but it's forcing us to learn new skills, and that's never a bad thing as well. And so if you make the most out of that, there's some benefit to what you're saying. And I really admire the fact that you have this organization and that you've managed to keep this community going, especially during the difficult times that journalism has faced. I myself, having started my own media company back in 2018, and keenly aware of how difficult it can be sometimes and how much we've had to adapt and evolve. I spent the most of my career living and working overseas. And I was a freelance for most of that period. I worked for the New York Times, I worked for USA Today and Time, and a host of others. I did some cable news work. And I was able to learn a lot from those experiences, but during the course of that time, I also saw how the industry was contracting and how it changed the way that we were, producing stories and what stories were getting the attention they needed or ones that weren't getting that attention anymore. Unfortunately, my longtime passion covering Afghanistan has become very difficult to cover these days because the interest just isn't there and the budgets aren't there, and because of the security risks that go along with it, we are not getting the true story of what's happening there right now, and I find that to be very disheartening. There's still some good reporters there, but the volume, the voices that we're hearing from places like Afghanistan or Iraq, or even what's happening in Haiti right now, or Ukraine, or Gaza, we're not getting a plurality of voices from journalists telling those stories that we were in the past. And I'm hoping that outlets like mine that are trying to figure out new ways to do things, I know we're all trying to figure out new ways to do things, but can crack that code. We're a very small organization. We cover the Rust Belt, Appalachia, and post-industrial communities around the world, but somehow we figured out how to have some really good reporting from Ukraine, and we've had, in interesting ways that, calling my contacts through my years working overseas, I've managed to tell a few really important stories and connect the dots between what's happening there and what's happening here. I find that one of the things that we're missing the boat on in journalism right now, it's not I'm not blaming us, but is that connectivity between, for example, what's happening in Gaza right now and how that affects you and me. And it does. And I find that now what I'm doing at PostIndustrial is hoping to connect those, to create that connective thread for people here to understand what's happening there and vice versa. And also do so within our own community. Like I said, I didn't grow up here, but I feel a kinship here, not only because of my wife and the time that I spend here, but because I came from a community very similar to this one. I'm from the Pittsburgh area, and I came from a town that was highly industrialized for decades, very successful, had a cast of criminal characters that we all like to romanticize now, but it was the same. We were about a fourth of the size of the city of New Kensington. We were once the largest aluminum manufacturer in the world. And when that ended around the mid-'70s, the city went into a steep decline for a number of decades, and has recently found its a new life due to dedicated people who are reimagining that community. And seeing my own hometown go through that transformation is what really inspired me to create PostIndustrial, and to see that there's value not only in highlighting communities that are often overlooked or misunderstood, as ours were constantly throughout these last couple of elections. I feel like another one of the reasons why I started PostIndustrial was because of the way we were mischaracterized, the Rust Belt, particularly as out-of-work steel workers and opioid addicts and disaffected folks who that doesn't really represent who we are. And I felt like that story, our story, needed to be told in an authentic way that a lot of the national media was missing. And so I'm hoping to hear from more folks, not only from the Youngstown area, but any of these fine journalists that we have in the room, young and old. I would love to hear more of your stories. I want to hear more from you about what we should be doing better. I want to hear more from you about what we're missing. What's the story of Youngstown that we should tell the rest of the world? I feel like just in the time that I've been spending here, Lindsay and I have been together for over 5 years, I've seen things change in Youngstown. I've come to learn about its problems and its politics and its history, and I see great potential here, just like I see in my own hometown in New Kensington. And I see the things that are happening here, and it's really great. It warms my heart to see a room full of journalists, in these times. And I really want to thank you for, welcoming me in, not only here today, but I feel so welcome in this community as a whole. And thank you. I really appreciate it. I want to make it quick. I know we all want to get out of here, but if you have any questions anybody wants to ask, that's all fine. I'm ready to go. Go ahead. I know. I get that, yeah. Okay, what do you want to know? Okay. Well, we're not getting a chance to hear from a lot of the voices that are most deeply impacted by the fact that the Taliban are now in control again, and those are the women and the children. One of the reasons why I maintain that connection, I'm very passionate about that story. Back in 2021, when the Taliban took over, the person that I had worked with for a number of years, my friend Zubair Babakharhale, was in trouble. The Taliban was going to execute him, his wife, and his 3 children. They were in hiding, and his wife was pregnant with their 4th. And it was a very tense 2 weeks that I called every person I knew in every 3-letter agency in the US government, including the CIA, and said, what can you do? And he got out after 2 weeks of this, and now he's living in the Pittsburgh area. He has a home. He's doing the American dream better than I am. I mean, he's fantastic. But what we're missing is that there are those that are left behind who are enduring not only the fact that the country is poorly run by this awful regime, but women are not going to school anymore. It's a complete collapse of the society that for 20 years we spent our blood and treasure trying to prop up, and it all fell apart. And it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. Yeah.
What's your perspective on the outcome of the Taliban taking over? There's been a lot of talk about who was at fault, or could Afghanistan really emerge as a country that actually do you think, or do you think it was inevitable because of corruption and the lack of leadership this is going to happen?
That was an inevitability, yes. Can Afghanistan be a country? Well, here's the way I often put it. Afghanistan's not really a nation, it's where other borders end. You have all these tribes, and and sub-tribes, and folks who have varying interests, and all these manipulators from abroad, be they in Saudi Arabia, UAE, or wherever. And again, the people that are caught in the middle, that are the average citizens, suffer miserably due to this. And not only do we lament the fact that they're stuck there, but also all those that left, like my friend Zubair, he's a very bright guy. He'd be very helpful in a country like that as trying to regain its footing. And their best and brightest are taking off. It's a problem that we've seen time and time again. And when authoritarian regimes take over a country, it's unfortunate. Go ahead.
I'd like to bring it back to your current work. Based on what you've seen, what lessons does Youngstown hold for the other communities, similar communities that you cover? And conversely, what can you learn from those other communities programs?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that. I feel very intimidated answering that question full of Youngstown journalists. Tell you how to fix your, look, the university has a weird relationship with your city, right? It's kind of, it's not quite fully integrated into I see the reimagining of downtown, and I see how long it's taken to fix the streets down there. I know there's a story in that. I know. By the way, just as real quick, who here has ever got an interview with the mayor? Anybody? I've hit this guy up a bunch of times. Okay, maybe we should all band together and send him an email and say, why not do a press conference? All right? What? Okay, okay. But no, what lessons? Look, a city like Youngstown and a city like my own hometown of New Kensington once had a population of 25,000, now has 6. Now, Youngstown used to be like 150 or 160, and now it's 60. you have to reimagine. You can't. What's that? 40. Okay. With the right kind of leadership, and I'm not going to say I know what kind of leadership you have, but with the right kind of leadership, you can reimagine a community like that that can be a magnet for newcomers who are leaving other places. You know, a place like Youngstown in 30 or 40 years could be a climate refuge, if you think about it, right? I think that that's something that in the years to come, maybe Youngstown can start promoting itself as that becomes more apparent. But I think because like I've spent a lot of time here in past decades, I know what hard times you went through, and I see some positive things happening, especially in your downtown redevelopment. And but I think that what could Youngstown learn from other communities? I don't speak to. You guys should tell me that. That's who wants to write that story for me. Like, I would love to know. I can't speak authoritatively to how's crime? Yeah, I know this town has been through a lot of trauma. I know of that personally because. Not only did my hometown go through it, but my father had a machine shop for decades, and I worked in that machine shop at a very, very young age, like a criminally young age. I was working a bandsaw when I was 8 years old wearing safety glasses. I have a scar on my face from a metal chip right here. I mean, that was terrible. That was bad parenting, but I learned a lot, and I knew exactly when the economy was going well, and I knew when things were not going well. I knew how much work was coming in and out of the shop. So, it took a long time for my hometown to recognize and admit that they were never going to be what it was, but it's time to try to be something else. And in that, they've formed a great partnership with the local branch of Penn State, which is doing a lot of incubating and innovation of small businesses, especially in the tech sector. You can't go wrong trying to encourage more tech investment and development. In a place like Youngstown where the cost of living is cheaper than, say, Palo Alto or Boston or some other of these tech hubs. That's just my guess.
Mark, do you have an opinion about the quality of the journalists and graduates coming in the United States?
We always complain about the new people, right? Don't we always complain about the youngsters, right? We're always going to complain. Okay. Full disclosure, I've never taken a journalism class, never one. But I have lectured at journalism, and I've lectured at the graduate level. And I've noticed that they're really whiz-bang great on the technical side, on the editing, all the software. Nobody wants to write. Everybody wants to be in front of the camera. And I feel like if we impressed upon, and I know this is, I'm not trying to tell anybody how to do their job, but if you know how to write for print, then writing scripts for radio or podcasts or television is much easier if you have that foundation. It's just true, right? Because I came from a print background, and then when it came time when I started doing radio and I started producing scripts for television and stuff, I was like, oh, this is easy. I mean, comparatively to what you're doing, because you're just synthesizing, it's not easy, but it's just I feel like if you have that solid foundation in writing, and a lot of these students are missing that.
One of the things about teams is lying. One of the things we all learned when we first started in this business was something over 5 years.
Yeah.
All too often, I don't even know the local because I mean elsewhere. What happened?
I don't know.
Some of these stories are asking yourself, not only how can you leave that information out, but what the hell is happening to this stuff?
I know. Yeah. I look through dozens of media outlets every single day from our coverage area, and a lot of them are with the locals. And I know that there's not just with the locals, but at every tier, there's folks that aren't hitting the 5 Ws, that's for sure. Aren't telling a solid story and aren't writing a snappy lead and aren't giving me the details I need, and there aren't the editors there to fix those problems. Mentorship is really hard. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So.
Can you talk a bit more about post-industrial too? Because it's interesting you say, you didn't have any formal construction. How do you really surround yourselves pretty talented?
Yeah, I have. I've been very fortunate because some of the folks, I've found a lot of great new voices that I've been able to discover by just searching through these different communities, trying to find people. I was just telling you some folks about this great new writer that we have working for us who just wrote this great column about how he grew up in a rural farm in very rural Michigan, near the pinky of the mitten, and then went on to go to school in Columbia, worked at a Fortune 500 company, returned to the family farm, and is now trying to help narrow the divide between rural and urban America. We've seen this vast divide that we're seeing between rural and urban attitudes, and the disconnectivity that I think is a result of that is because of cities like the size of Pittsburgh, my hometown, New Kensington, Youngstown, are shrinking, and that they created there was a connective tissue that cities this size helped bridge the difference between rural America and urban America. Even in its heyday here in Youngstown, I'm sure you could drive 10, 15 minutes outside of town and you're in farm country. And that's a good thing, right? Right? That's how I grew up. I was joking. I grew up in a very rural part outside of New Kensington. We had well water. Lindsay grew up in Canfield. She had well water too. We knew, how different it was there compared to the city, but how close it was as well. But we become so detached from one another, and I know COVID did a lot to do that, and we could talk about that all night. But I think that what I'm trying to do with post-industrial is create more connectivity between cities like Youngstown and Pittsburgh across state lines. We have a lot of this interstate rivalry that has to do with our sports, and that's all well and good. That's right. We can hate each other on Sundays. But during the rest of the week, can we figure out how to better be connected so that we can help each other out, whether it's journalism or politics or community organizing or even in the arts? We're trying to do more at Post-Industrial to highlight the arts because we want to highlight people in this area that in our coverage area that are doing exceptional things that people, if there's an artist in Pittsburgh that folks in Youngstown should know about. It's not that far. Come to a gallery. We'll come up here. There should be more of that, The road trip is back, all right? Let's spend more time on the road getting to know our neighbors in Cleveland and Columbus and all these places that we like to cover. It's post-industrial, and I was talking about this earlier, is a lot for my own edification as well. I spent 20-some years living and working abroad, and when I decided that I wanted to start this company, I didn't know what the hell was going on. Day to day, I was just shocked at what I was learning all the time. I thought I experienced gun violence in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other conflicts around the world. Again, like I was saying, I read these local outlets from all of our coverage area. It's atrocious how many people are getting shot, how many children, and just handgun accidents. I'm very anti-gun, by the way. Super anti-gun. And so is our position of post-industrial, I don't care. I've learned a lot about America just digging into this every single day, learning, what are the challenges folks are facing. Before I started post-industrial, I didn't know that we had a rural hospital closing epidemic dilemma in America, and I've come to learn about it. And again, people now have to go 45, 50 minutes to get to go to an ER. The hospital in my hometown closed a long time ago. I was treated for 3 childhood concussions there. What would I do now? So these topics are things that not only affect a place like Northeast Ohio, but they affect Western PA, they affect rural Michigan, and I'm trying to, with post-industrial, tell these stories, and so hopefully create some kinship among our post-industrial community so that we can learn from each other and benefit from learning about our successes and our failures. Good.
On that note, just
That is true. That is true. You know what's interesting? I had a Pennsylvania congressman on my podcast last week, Congressman Chris DeLuzio, who is very passionate about train safety because his district borders the district of East Palestine. So he's been over there a lot talking to people. That's not his state. Those aren't his constituents, but he's reaching across. You know, that's important. And he's actually reached across the aisle. He's a Democrat. He's working with J.D. Vance on a rail safety bill, trying to get that passed. That's good stuff. That we want to do more of that. Good.
Artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Good, bad,
I'm dust off my philosophy degree now. We were talking about this earlier. We've used some artificial intelligence for creating images. We haven't done anything with words. I need to be more well-versed. Do I think it's dangerous? Yeah, of course it could be dangerous. Anything in the wrong hands can be dangerous. Do we have to act responsibly with it? Yes. Are we going to act responsibly with it? No. Are we going to learn some hard lessons? Yes. Well, a whole bunch of people have their identity stolen, probably. I don't know. This is what happens when we have a new technology. You know, when cars were first invented, most cities banned them. They were too dangerous. Everything's an existential threat at some point. So, good. I'm sorry, I'll get to you too.
I was wondering if, because of your experience, especially in Afghanistan, your close experience with authoritarian regimes, when you talk to average citizens, is there, in your experience, anything that offers an explanation as to why authoritarianism can be attractive to the average Joe?
I'm going to say something that I said earlier that's kind of cynical, but I'm just going to use it anyway. No one ever went broke appealing to our lesser angels. You know, there's that unfortunate part of our humanity that if you dig into our insecurities and exploit them en masse over and over again, that's my answer to your question.
I take you up to the current political climate in this country, and a lot of us see evidence that this doesn't make any sense.
I agree.
But it exists. Why does it exist?
Because I think that large swaths of America feel as though they have been forgotten and ignored and disrespected. And in a world where you can't tell the difference readily between what's real and fake when you look at something, is that image real? It's hard. It's hard for us, right? We have to verify, figuring out, what's real and what's not. How is it for the average person who's just on their computer, who doesn't have this background in journalism, who knows that these are the good sources and these are the bad sources? It's a confusing time. And, how do we solve that with education, with better media literacy, civics? I'm 50, almost 50, and I wasn't taught civics in school. We don't teach it anymore. We don't teach Americans how to be good American citizens. That's part and parcel of the job. Democracy is a job every single day that you have to do, and sometimes it sucks. Like, you have to wait outside in the rain to vote for county commissioner on a Tuesday. You're like, what? Why am I doing this? Because it sucks to sometimes do it, but you got to do it. And I think we've lost some of that in America. Like, that the responsibility that comes with our particular brand of democracy is a great one, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. There you go.
Can you talk about your transition from being a war correspondent to what you're doing now? So after your injury, you went back.
Right.
Correct? So what was it that made you decide then that you were done? And what made you decide to do what you're doing now?
My daughter. She, even after she was born, I was still covering the fighting in Iraq. At the time, I was embedded with Iraqi Special Forces. They were fighting ISIS in Mosul. in Northern City. It was some of the worst, god-awful fighting I've ever seen. It was just terrible. And I just, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I got a 2-year-old at home. I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm getting too slow, and this isn't the right thing for me anymore. I just didn't feel like I had the requisite composure to keep doing it. I remember, so I decided, okay, I'm gonna make this change. I'm gonna try to build something for myself, because again, I'd been freelance for so many years. The vast majority of my career, I've been a freelancer. And so I've been able to see how a lot of different organizations operate. I thought, well, if these idiots can do it. But no, it was, like I said, again, it was also part of my own edification. I came back because I wanted to know what was going on. After a trip I had taken to Afghanistan many years ago, I treated myself to a road trip. I just decided to drive. And I did it through the South. I'd never been through the South, not hardly at all. I went to places like Kentucky. I'd never been there. I'd never been to Tennessee, Mississippi. And I got to rural Mississippi, and I was like, what is going on in this country? I was like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, there were people had like just pipes leading out of their houses with water flowing, like the sewage water. I was like, how is this a thing? It looked like Haiti. I was just blown away by what I was seeing. And then, so the wheels started turning in my head, and it took me years to figure it out and to create the idea of post-industrial. And because what really, really sparked it was the 2016 election. Again, I was talking about how regularly, Trump would come to a place like Youngstown and tell people that we're gonna reopen the factories. I'm like, that factory's been torn down for 30 years. What are you opening? The other one's a beer garden now. What factories are you talking about? And people bought into this, and people that know better, by the way. And so, going back to your question, some of that is clinical or psychological. I can't get into that. But, I feel like during that period, I also saw a lot of the national media completely missing the ball on covering places like this. You folks know. You'd see when people turn up about Lordstown, they'd show up at Lordstown, take their pictures to grab some quotes. It's in the Times. Do they capture what's going on? I still can't follow what's going on with that place, day to day. I'm gonna have to ask you. But I wanted to try to create more connectivity with the community and tell the stories of what was happening in these disaffected communities, because I grew up in one of them, right? And I got tired of seeing the Washington Post or CNN drive. They always do this. They drive 3.5 hours from DC to Johnstown, PA. They interview 3 people in a diner, and then they leave. I'm sick of that stuff. I'm sick of that shit. I'm just tired of it. All right? And that's why I created Post-Industrial, because I wanted to try to tell that story better. Because post-industrial America, the Rust Belt and Appalachia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan and Wisconsin, they gave Trump the presidency in 2016. They changed the face of the planet, the voters in those 3 states. And then 4 years later, they did it again. So this region that I call post-industrial America is wildly influential and important. For decades, we were the economic industrial backbone of America, and that we weren't recognized. We felt like we were recognized at home, but we didn't get the proper recognition in places like New York, Chicago, and the other cities that the Mahoning Valley built, right? That Pittsburgh built. The aluminum, the Alcoa Labs in my hometown worked on the Apollo mission capsules. I mean, my town was the Google of its time. And they played a really important part in America and continue to do so in a different capacity, and those stories should be told. That should be shared with everyone else. Go ahead.
Can you tell us more about the underlying business model for post-industrial and what makes it successful?
Okay. So we have a multitude of revenue streams that we draw from. We have subscribers, and we also have we occasionally do events. Things like this, where we did an event in Atlanta around cybersecurity, because that's a big center for cybersecurity, is in Atlanta. That's part of our coverage area. We also did an event in the Pittsburgh area I was talking about my friend Zubair and the Afghan community there. So we do things like that, but we are also a commercial production company. So we do commercial projects for, we build podcasts and programming and video for corporate and individual clients. So those two things are separate from one another. We have the editorial side and the commercial production side. That's how we produce. So far, so good. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Carmen and Lindsay. We're so glad that you were here and shed such great light on what you're doing and what your history was and what have you. So Joanne is going to bring up what has become our signature thank you gift, lovingly and thoughtfully created by Joanne Kolaric. So it's our Youngstown basket. So I'll leave you with just a few ending comments. We're a little ahead of schedule and we want to keep it that way. So I mentioned Joanne, and I want to make sure we all understand that without her expertise in securing our event venues, we would be in my basement, truly, okay? So she connects the dots. She finds us appropriate locations. I'd also like to acknowledge Stambaugh Auditorium as sort of our home base. They have been so generous to us over the years. When we first started holding events, the couple a year that we did, they jumped right on with us. And so we like to be here for our larger events, and we're very happy to be in such an iconic Youngstown location. Our Hall of Fame nominations are still available until May 1st. Please take the time today to consider who deserves to be in the Youngstown Press Club Hall of Fame. No one can be added to the list if they aren't nominated. So if you are a member, you may nominate. If you know someone that you would like to nominate, please connect up with a member and make your case. Don't be that person who says they should have nominated somebody, because there are so many good people in our history. And also, we're 5 years old. So we haven't been able to appropriately recognize everybody that should be recognized because we're 5 years old. No, not at all, not at all. But you know what? Those Facebook folks are really giving us some good ideas, and so that's not a bad thing. On May 3rd, we will host World Press Freedom Day at the Mahoning County Courthouse at noon. 99 journalists who have been killed in the line of duty will be publicly named. Let that sink in. 99 journalists killed in 2023. We'll honor their legacy that day. This is a continuous thing for the noon hour. If you're available and can stop by, we will be in the Rotunda. It's a very appropriate place. Judge Teresa Delick is going to make a few short comments right at noon about press freedom. So if you're available, stop by. Be safe. Have a great week. Thanks for coming. Good night.